this call is on procuring meals for summer and the 22-23 school year. And so I just wanted to name that this call is really directed toward a number of SFAs that were using Preferred Meals as a vendor and received notice that they will not be continuing service after 6/30/2022. So we open this call up to everyone. So of course it's open to others who are still thinking about going out to bid this school year and are interested in possibly teaming up with another SFA. But if you have already signed your contract for next school year, then this information may be helpful in future years. So we, of course, invite you to stay on the call and listen in. It just might not be as time sensitive for others. And then I see some self-preps on this call, so welcome. If you are a self-prep on this call and you're interested in possibly selling meals to another SFA on here, I invite you to stay on as well, because you could be super helpful there. All right, so our agenda for today, we're just going to do some quick introductions. I'll go over the purpose of this call. I just touched on it a little bit. We'll go over summer meal procurement options as well as options for procurement in the 22-23 school year. We'll go over some next steps, and then I really want to leave room for questions and a discussion, and we can answer any clarifying questions you have and maybe give you guys the opportunity to connect with each other as we work through next steps for everybody. So I'm Alex Dobbs, and I am the NSLP Compliance Manager. Also on this call, you have a number of OSSE folks. Elizabeth Leach, she's the School Nutrition Programs Manager. Nigel Henley, who's doing all the behind the scenes of this call. And then I'm sure you've worked most closely with your program specialists, Lizette Wells and Kimberly Thompson. And then not shown here is another OSSE specialist, Nicole King, who runs summer, and I will be sharing her contact information out a little bit later because she also could be an assistance in helping procurement for summer meals. So the purpose for today is we want SFAs to understand the different methods of procurement available to them. We want you to feel empowered to conduct procurement for your food service program. We're going to hold space for SFAs to share questions and concerns, as well as a discussion. And then we want you guys to utilize OSSE as a support system while you navigate challenges. All right, so before we really dive into the info, we had a request from the USDA Foods Processing team, and they're requesting information on what schools using preferred meals contracts now have contracts with summer meals included. So this is the list I have of schools using preferred meals that I believe got this letter. So I'm just going to run down this list and call in. This will be the only time I call on you this call, okay? So don't get nervous. And I'm just going to ask if you were planning on using preferred meals to serve meals this summer. So this is not only a request that USDA needs to know for foods processing purposes, but it's also really going to help us because the priority here is summer, since starting July 1st, you won't have a vendor. So it's going to help us know what schools really, really need assistance as we talk through what we can do this summer and what we can do this school year. So I'm just going to give you, feel free to come off mute or put it in the chat, and I'll just give everyone like a second or two to answer. If I don't hear from you, I'll skip on to the next one.
Hi, this is Trina from Basis, and thank you so much. Hey, Alex.
Hey, thanks for being on it. I didn't even call on you. You're ready to go. Let's hear it.
You know what? I was ready. Oh my gosh.
Were you serving meals using preferred this summer? Did you have summer service with them?
Yeah, well, we were going to, yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay, you plan to. That's what I mean. You plan to. Okay, great.
Right.
So that's
yes.
a yes for Basis.
Yes.
Thanks, Trina. All right, what about Center City? Is Center City on the line? Okay, I don't see Center City. What about DC Scholars? Thought I saw someone from DC Scholars, but maybe you're putting it in the chat. Digital Pioneer Academy, are you guys here? Okay, anyone from my dream?
Yes. Hey Alex, we were planning on using preferred meals.
You were using them this summer. Okay, that's a yes for I Dream. Thank you. Okay, Deanna, thank you. KIP is planning to continue with preferred meals for summer. I was wondering if you were involved in this, since I know that you have a slightly different model of service, but that is good to know you're planning to use them because USDA needs to know that information for USDA foods. So thank you. All right, what about the Children's Guild?
Yes, so we are searching because they've given us a June 30th termination date. So I have 9 meetings lined up in the next 12 days to see what we can do. But I just wanted to, I guess we'll verify later the procurement process for summer.
Yep. Yeah, so I'll go over, that's awesome that you're on it already. We're gonna go over the options to you, so you'll know, there's a few different options, but we'll discuss what you can use for summer. Not necessarily what you can use, but what we think is gonna be the easiest thing to use. So hopefully this is helpful for everyone. Okay, Children's Guild, thank you. Two Rivers.
Hey, Alex. Yes, we were planning on using preferred meals, but we have started to look elsewhere as options just in case, things fall through with them.
Perfect. Okay. Yeah, mine and you guys have the vended, no prep on site vended. Okay, yeah. So my understanding is they are not going to be able to serve after 6:30. Okay, perfect. And then last but not least, Washington Global. Let's see, Diana, were you planning on using preferred this summer? Do you have summer service? Okay, we will circle back there. Matt, I see you have your hand raised.
Oh yeah, I just wanted to clarify that. I don't know if that came across, but I realize I might need to clarify that we were planning before they dropped us.
Right, you were planning to. Okay. That's what we wanted to know. Who had summer service lined up that now does not in 1 month? Okay, thank you for this information. That was really helpful. So as we talk about procurement options, we were really guiding this conversation knowing that summer's priority, but also knowing that school year is quickly behind it. So we'll talk about what we think is best for summer and then what we think is best for the school year. Okay, thank you guys. Thank you for that information. If we did not hear from you, I might just ping you after this and shoot you a quick, or maybe one of the program specialists, just to see if you're planning on having summer school. And if so, were you planning to use preferred, not summer school, summer service? All right, thank you so much. Okay, so for methods of procurement, today we are reviewing the following methods of procurement. So this is not an exhaustive list of every type of procurement method. These are just the ones we're reviewing today because these are the ones that are most applicable, or the ones that we think will be best to use. So we have an emergency procurement. You can also use a small purchase method, which sometimes you might hear us refer to as like an informal procurement. The formal procurement, which I think everyone is super familiar with, where you go out to bid with an IFB or an RFP. We're going to talk about the potential of partnering with another organization, such as an SFA or a sponsor, to serve meals. And then throughout this whole meeting, we really want to connect that although this is not ideal, I actually think it really presents an opportunity to collaborate with other SFAs using any of these methods. So traditionally, what I'm sure most people are used to is putting out a solicitation by themselves and getting pricing, and that's it. But there is a bigger opportunity here to potentially purchase meals from another SFA, join together with another SFA, go out to procurement with another SFA. And so theoretically speaking, like the higher the volume, the better pricing you'll get. So while not ideal, because I know it's May and most people probably wanted to do this much earlier, I think it actually could in the long term be beneficial, because I think it gives us an opportunity to really get better pricing for everyone, knowing that pricing across the board is rising everywhere. Going in together, it could be good in that sense. All right, so for an emergency procurement, so SFAs may utilize a non-competitive emergency procurement when a need or emergency circumstance arises, such as a scenario where the vendor is no longer able to provide meals, such as a scenario where there's a global pandemic and other things need to happen. So there are scenarios where you can use an emergency procurement. This would definitely be one of them. To use an emergency procurement, it must be of limited duration, and then the SFA should plan to resolicit contracts when the emergency has ended. So if you utilize an emergency procurement for this year, you wouldn't be able to renew it unless, of course, there's a whole different emergency scenario at the end of the contract. So to do an emergency procurement, this is the different documentation needed. You'll want to do a written justification for the emergency purchase. You'll want to have some supporting documentation for this justification. For example, the letter from your vendor. You can save that letter in a folder. You can write a brief, write down like a brief scenario on the situation that's happening, which would justify the use for the emergency procurement. You're also going to want to document the goods and services required, the unit price for goods, the vendor name, the date of purchase, and then approval and signatures of the designated authorities. So to keep all of these last bullet points, it's best that you sign a contract because that's going to have all of that information that you need in it. And then you're going to keep these documents on file should you do an emergency procurement, because we will ask for it during a procurement review. So for all documentation, you need to keep it on file for 3 years. So our recommendation, put it into a folder, and then when you have your next AR, you'll just be able to send that folder to us, and that will be all we'll need there. The next method that is an option for you is a small purchase method. So SFAs may procure using the small purchase method if your total contract value is under the simplified acquisition threshold of $250,000. That number is different if you're a DC government agency. So if you're DCPS or DYRS, it's 100,000. I don't think either are on this call today, but just in case you hopped on, I wanted to flag that. And then to do a small purchase, you must provide full and open competition. And then a small purchase procurement is distinguished from a more formal procurement method in that an SFA is not required to issue a request for a proposal or invitation for bids. You don't have to publicly post the solicitation. You don't have to use the seal bid process. And that price quotes can be obtained at any time. So what are the steps if you want to do a small purchase method? You're going to develop the specifications. So you're going to want to make sure whoever you're getting a quote from knows what you're looking for. You're going to identify sources and obtain at least 2 price quotes. So that means you want to get quotes from 2 different qualified sources. You're going to evaluate the responses that you received, and then you're going to sign a contract. In this contract, you want to ensure it contains all federally required provisions. So what we really recommend, we don't have a small purchase method template or contract there, but we recommend you take one of our formal contracts that's in the OSSE suite, just do like a Control F and remove any language that refers to like a formal bid. So if it says like request for a proposal or things like that, you would just delete them. And you can use that contract. It's just a modified contract. Of course, you can create your own from scratch, but this is a little bit easier because the framework's already there for you. And then once you have a contract signed with someone, you're going to want to manage it. And then this process is in greater detail in our state agency memo. So it just walks you through these points a little bit more. All right, so the other method that you can use is the formal procurement method, which is issuing like the RFP or IFB. And this one's probably super familiar to you all because this is typically what you have in place during the school year. So you're going to use if you're over the $250,000 threshold, unless you're doing an emergency procurement. The formal procurement method is a cost-effective competitive procurement. So the RFP is called Request for a Proposal, and this is awarded to the responsive and responsible bidder whose offer is most advantageous to the SFA based upon specified evaluation criteria. So an RFP is the best method of procurement to use when the quality of goods received may vary significantly. If you have a food service management company, commonly referred to as an FSMC, you have to use the RFP. And then the other formal procurement is called an invitation for bid, or an IFB, and these are awarded to the responsive and responsible bidder with the lowest priced. So the IFB is the best procurement template to use when the quality of goods received does not vary significantly. Something I just realized I didn't mention, I'll send this right after the call. We can send this out to everybody. So don't feel like you have to take like detailed notes and memorize everything, but we'll send it out and make sure you have the links, because within here I've hyperlinked like a lot of resources for you to use. Okay, so what are the steps for the formal procurement method? So you're going to determine the formal procurement type. Do you want to do an IFB or an RFP? Which one's best for your school? You'll develop the documents using the OSSE template. So all of our templates have been moved to our website. It's linked here. And then along with these templates, we have a self-guided training. So if you have not used our OSSE template, I really recommend everyone take the self-guided training. It's going to walk you through piece by piece how to fill it out. Even if you have used the templates, it's always good to do a refresher. And then if you're utilizing an FSMC, it does require OSSE approval. So if you have, let's say, servers at your site and you're trying to issue a solicitation that includes servers, it's going to be an FSMC and OSSE needs to review it. If you are doing a vended contract, it does not require OSSE review. So this is a little bit different than the past. OSSE used to review them. We don't actually need to. We're happy to assist if you have questions or anything, but the contract that requires OSSE review is only the FSMC, not just a vended contract. You'll need to publicly post a notice of the availability of the solicitation, and then you're going to review the proposals, make an award, and then make sure you maintain all procurement documentation, because we do procurement reviews every 3 to 4 years or so. Okay, and this is where I think the formal procurement method can look super interesting and probably very different than what folks on this call are used to. So since many of you likely had very similar vended meal service, because Preferred Meals canceled a specific style of service, which is what most people on this call had that was using them, you can issue a solicitation together if you're utilizing for formal procurement. So if you open up the OSSE template, in the very back, we give language on joint purchasing. So this is just a screenshot of what it looks like. It's not a screenshot where you're supposed to be able to read exactly what it says. I just wanted to show you what it looks like within the template. And so if you want to put out a formal procurement this year, but you're thinking like, how do I get better pricing? There's a real opportunity to work with another SFA on this call, multiple SFAs on this call, if everyone's looking for that pre-plate vended meals, and you can issue a bid together. And within this bid, you'll say the delivery sites. It's possible to have different invoices. So once you issue the bid, it's not like one person's paying for all the meals and everyone pays them. You can be on separate contracts. But doing this together will increase your volume, which should then decrease your price. It potentially might not decrease your price than what you're getting now due to all of the supply chain issues and inflation, but it could potentially decrease the price on what you would get if you were just issuing a formal procurement on your own. All right, and then we do have another option that we've been kind of talking about recently, where you can procure meals from another SFA. So SFAs and sponsor may seek delivery of pre-plate meals from other willing and capable SFAs without using a competitive solicitation, even when over the small purchase threshold. So in this scenario, the following conditions may be met. So the agreement must be documented with a written contract or agreement, such as an MOU. SFAs and sponsors developing an MOU are encouraged to reference the provisions to include in a pre-plate meal vending solicitation document for what may be included. So that's linked right here. And so if you're creating an MOU, you want to make sure these provisions are in there. The prices for the meals paid by the purchasing SFA or sponsor must be reasonable. So determine a reasonable price. The purchasing SFA or sponsor may use the small price procedure where you get quotes from other people to see like what's a reasonable price. Or you could use historical price data for what you've paid for meals in the past. The provider SFA must provide appropriate menu and production record documentation to the receiving SFA. If the provider SFA contracts with an FSMC, then the SFA solicitation and contract with that FSMC must identify vending and meals to offsite schools as a required service, and then also include the scope and size of vending. So if it's an FSMC, this verbiage has to be in that original solicitation. And then records and documents must be maintained consistent with nutrition program requirements. So this is probably very new to a lot of folks, but you can buy meals from another SFA. So let's say you have a buddy that's at the school right next to you and they're a self-prep. You could ask them, hey, can we purchase meals from you? What would be a price? And you guys can come to an agreement on what's a reasonable price. And now there's no bid, there's no solicitation. School A, school B is just buying meals from school A. Doesn't have to be a self-prep. It can be a vended school as well. But that's just some scenarios on how this relationship could look. All right, so I just went over kind of like buckets of procurement and just a brief overview and then next steps for each one. And here's where I'm going to get into the recommendations for summer. So first we'll talk about summer, then we'll talk about this school year. So for those of you that are needing meals for summer, you have a few options. So the first option is you could operate a site under another summer sponsor organization. So there are existing summer sponsors that are willing to take on additional sites. So in this scenario, they already have everything set up and you would just become a site under them and they would operate your meal service. You would likely serve the meals on site, but they would be your sponsor organization. So if you're interested in this, we have Nicole King on this call. Linked here is her contact information. So again, if you're thinking about being a site under another sponsor, we'll connect you with Nicole and she can talk through like how that would look and connect you with some sponsors are interested. So that's good and she can connect you with them. Additionally, for summer, you can do an emergency procurement for vended meals. Oh my gosh, a typo. Hope that's the first one. It's the first one I've noticed. Great. Okay, good. And then you can do the small purchase method, which is informal, or purchase meals from another SFA, which is the procuring from another SFA, which is what I just talked about. And then, of course, with any of these methods, you can team up with another SFA and go in on it together. So that would look like someone taking the lead on it and then doing the legwork, and all the SFAs could, benefit from it, or you split it up into different parts. Someone could get quotes, someone could assess the quotes and things like that. So those are the recommendations for summer. I think it's too short of a turnaround to do a formal procurement. That would be really, really tight unless your summer doesn't start until August. In that case, you could do a formal procurement for summer that just carries you through the school year. But likely most of you are starting on July 1st. So these are our recommendations to do summer meals.
Hey, Alex, can I ask a question? Yeah, okay. Somebody mentioned using DPR, but I don't know. Can you talk about that if that's an option?
Yeah, so Nicole is our SFSP coordinator, and so she sent like a blast email out yesterday to all of the summer sponsors. DPR is a summer sponsor. I know that 2 people have expressed interest and said they can take on other sites. I don't know if DPR has responded to the email yet. I don't think the email was sent like less than 24 hours ago. So there's potential that there's more updated information there. But if DPR can't, there's sponsors that operate very similar to DPR. They serve the SFSP meal pattern that could potentially take on sites. So I think that that's a really great option. I think it's one of the easier options. I kind of put these like in order of what I think is the best. Okay, thank you. Nicole says DPR does not have the ability to take on other sites, but there's two that do. So it would be, it could be a different organization, but it would be the same in the sense that they're filling out the application for you and that you're a site under them.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, now we'll talk about recommendations for the school year, and then we'll go into next step. And then I'm really just going to open it up for any clarifying questions. And then I do have some discussion questions that I want to ask you guys as we think through this. So recommendations for the 22-23 school year. So you can procure meals using any one of the methods below. So you can do an emergency procurement. If you did an emergency procurement, you just could not renew it. So if you did a formal procurement, you could have this for multiple years. Emergency, just 1 year, unless of course there's another emergency scenario that would allow you to do another emergency procurement. If you're under that $250,000 threshold, you can do the small purchase method. So you wouldn't need to go out to bid. You could get those 2 quotes from people and sign a contract that way. You can do the formal procurement method. I know that's what people are most used to. If doing the formal procurement method, we definitely recommend that you procure together. You're going to get better pricing, and it really just is an opportunity to work together and work with other SFAs. And then you can also purchase meals from another SFA. So this will require you to reach out to a couple SFAs, seeing if anyone is willing and able, get some quotes, talk about what that partnership could look like, and see if they could either provide you meals or even if they could potentially take you on as a site under their SFA. So with any of these methods, there is the opportunity to work together. So even if you were doing an emergency procurement, you can do it 2 SFAs, 3 SFAs, all, I don't know how many, 8 SFAs could do it together. If you're not in the preferred meals situation, you can still work with other SFAs and issue a formal procurement together. So while a lot of folks are in the preferred meal situation, this is open to anyone. Anyone can work with each other. Anyone can purchase from another SFA. These really do apply to everybody. And then in summary, these are our recommended next steps. Determine procurement method for summer, and then sign contract or set up partnership for summer meals. This is ASAP. I heard a lot of people that already have some meetings set up. I'm hoping some of you are going to reach out to Nicole after this call and see what sponsors could take them on. But yeah, this is definitely priority, knowing that we're just a month away. But the good news for all of the summer methods we talked about, it doesn't have to be open for a certain period of time. It doesn't take months. They are all very quick ways to procure meals. So I'm not worried about the time frame. So I just wanted to let you guys all know that. And then you're going to want to determine your procurement method for the school year. And then once you determine your procurement method for the school year, of course, you'll want to act on that. Okay, so before we get, I wanted to see what questions do you guys have for us? Clarifying questions, any questions you have? Chris, I see your hand.
Hi, Alex.
Yeah.
Yes. So my question is two-pronged. So with the preferred meals model, a lot of our equipment was modified to fit their model. So is there a way that OSSE can kind of lift the equipment justification provisions? Because a lot of us are probably going to have capital issues as far as reverting our equipment back to a probably not preferred meals prepackaged model.
You know, Chris, thanks for bringing this up. I honestly wasn't even thinking about equipment. Does Preferred own your equipment, or are they taking that equipment back, or is it your equipment? Like, are they taking their oven out of there?
No, so the ovens are ours, but our ovens were retrofitted for their specific racks. So we have to spend capital money to revert all of our equipment back to probably a model, because there's probably not going to be a company out there that does this mass produced prepackaged. So if we get, let's say, a company that says, hey, we can do your meals, but we have to send it in full pans. My kitchen is rated as a warming kitchen, so I have to put capital improvements into that to make my kitchen be able to hold, let's say, full pans of chicken, because now I'm going from a low to moderate to a high priority kitchen.
I hear what you're saying. I believe that like in an ideal world, this is what I think you're saying, you would still be able to get the prepackaged meals in, and then you would just be responsible for like heating them up and serving them on site. There are vendors in DC that can do that. So while your oven might be fitted to this preferred sheet pan or something like that, you would still, like, when I've seen vendors switch, but the equipment stays, typically what I see is that you're still going to get those prepackaged meals in, and then you could heat them on site. And so when you're looking at quotes or issuing a solicitation, you just want to be clear about the service that you're looking for. Now, if you want to switch over to like a cooking kitchen, you can certainly do that. But if you're trying to work with what you have, there's opportunity and there's vendors that can provide those prepackaged meals, and you would still be able to use those ovens. I don't, Chris, I've been to at least one of your sites. And so I don't think that you have to change the kitchen type or even the service model. Now, if you want to use preferred meals in their on-site scratch cooking model that they're still going to continue, that is when you're going to have to do some kitchen renovations and equipment renovations. But you can still procure meals in that same vended prepackaged model of service that you had last year. There's a couple other vendors that are doing that.
Okay, and then my last question is the emergency procurement provision. If we were to use that, I just want to be clear, we can use that for 1 year. So
it's
we
just
could
as
sign
long
a
as an
1 year
emergency. Yeah. Yeah. It's as long as an
Well,
emergency. Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, there are vendors out there that could probably fit our model, but if the price is not there, because remember, I'm one of the few SFAs in DC that has multi-jurisdictional, this affects a multi-jurisdiction approach. So I have to merge that with, my emergency procurement. So I just want to make sure that between MSDE and Maryland, I'm not, doing double work like you've seen that I've had to do, especially during AR periods.
Right. Yeah.
Okay,
Chris,
that's
I'm
it.
just gonna jump in and speak to that as well. This is Liz. Thanks for joining us on this call today. Federally, USDA and other, federal procurement defines emergency procurement as there is a set time duration. And so if you're developing an emergency procurement, you want to define the length of it. We think a school year is very reasonable. We don't think it would have to go past a school year, because during that school year, it'd be reasonable to assume one has the ability to go out for a formal solicitation. But federally, you shouldn't come up with any differences in the emergency procurement time duration between DC and Maryland. I can't speak to Maryland if the state of Maryland or something has something else, and I would encourage you to check with the powers that be on that side as well.
Okay, thanks, Liz. So capital improvements that can be a defined portion of our, that can be our explanation of the duration, right? Is
I
that,
think your
would that fall
explanation
under the
of emergency
guideline?
procurement is that your meal program vendor terminated your contract.
Okay, all right. Thanks, Liz.
Sure. I'm seeing a lot of questions in the chat. Alex, do you mind me to jump in and help facilitate some of these for you?
I was not looking at the chat. Thank you for that.
No
Can I
problem.
ask you a
All right,
question
so
real
we have a
quick? So
question
I
about when the vendor list will be updated, and I actually see that Lizette has already answered it in that we will be updating it ASAP and circulating that so folks can utilize an updated vendor list. And the next question, or this is a comment rather, from Gail Williams, Two Rivers Equipment is Preferred Meals, and they indicated they would be contacting us about collecting. Is there a question there, Gail, or just flagging for awareness, which is also super helpful?
Flagging for awareness, Alex asked the question about whether we owned our equipment or not in general.
Thank you.
So,
Yeah, I wasn't thinking about equipment and supply chain. There's a, every day a new layer emerges. So thank you. I do have a
That
question.
does allow us to promote the equipment grant that comes out of our office. And so annually we do administer an equipment grant. So keep an eye out on that over the next couple of months as it should be released. And then the next question comes from Kimberly. Alex, can you please explain the difference between picking up a site versus selling meals?
Yeah, so we've been this question's come up a lot recently in just like side conversations. So there's a couple things that you could do if you're partnering with an SFA to buy meals. So an SFA, let's say like a larger SFA, could take on a school as a site under them. So this would work really well if they were located in co-located within a school, or even if they were close to each other. And whereas there's one SFA, but potentially multiple LEAs under them. And so in this scenario, you would have one person acting as the food service director, you would have one person submitting the claims, you would have one person submitting the NSLP application. There's only one audit. So let's just say you have a larger SFA that has a food service director, and then you have some smaller SFAs that are sites under them. You're essentially no longer needing to work with OSSE. You're just working with your food service director and ensuring that on site your meals are compliant, and you're serving compliant meals and all of that, but you don't need the application or the audit. You could potentially be selected as a site for the audit, but you would not have your own audit if you go under another site. Now, that requires the site to be willing and able to do that because they would be taking on the financial burden. They would be making sure all the paperwork's aligned. And so it theoretically would work well if the school already has a food service director in that role. I know a lot of charter schools on here don't have a designated food service director. You're an operations manager, business manager that's also in charge of overseeing the food. So that's one that could potentially work, and we've seen that work if like a new charter school has opened up in an existing charter school space. They're sharing space. It makes sense if they just act as one SFA. The other thing you can do is buy meals from an SFA. So I'm just going to use Kimberly as an example. So she's a self-prep, and let's say someone went to Kimberly and said, hey, can I buy meals from you? And she could say, sure, we're selling meals at this price. And you would just have to work out like, how does the delivery work? How does the payment work? And she's giving you the meals. She's making sure she gives you production records. She's making sure she gives you meal documentation, but that site's responsible for everything else. So you're doing the application, you have the audit, you're making sure everything's in compliance on site, because then you're working directly with OSSE because you're running your own meal program. So if you're interested in partnering with another SFA, you could be a site under them as long as that SFA is willing, because it does require them taking on a little bit more work. But it could be beneficial. Like, let's say taking on more sites allows, it makes financial sense to now hire a food service director and a designated person to that role. So it could be a good thing. It just depends on like what is needed for your school. Or you can buy meals from another site. And if you're buying meals, you just want to make sure the price is fair. And to do that, I would use historical data. What have you typically been paying
what, you can get quotes from other people and just make sure, you know, if someone says our meals are $20 a pop, you would know, hey, that's like, sounds a little bit too high because you've done some research on it.
Great, thank you, Alex. We do have more questions coming in the chat, so I'll just keep asking them. Can you speak to the fact that RFPs and IFBs need to be posted for no less than 21 days, and what SFAs can do when they receive one bid?
Thanks. So you do need to publicly post the RFP and IFB for, I don't remember the exact verbiage, but it's for like, I don't, it's for a certain period of time. And so we say it needs to be over 21 days because you need to give people time to respond. If you have a super complicated bid, like you are doing FSMC, you're doing different models of service, I personally don't think 21 days is enough time. I don't know if anyone on this call falls into that scenario. So we typically say no less than 21 days. A month would be better. Now we're getting into summer, so if it's 21 days, that would be okay. So if you're doing the formal procurement, it needs to be publicly posted for a set period of time. And then if you only receive one bid, you need to make sure that that procurement was not what is the word I'm looking for? You need to make sure that it was open and fair competition. So let's say you only received one bid, but you specified name brand things and something that you only know one vendor could provide, that would not be proper procurement. But if you use the OSSE template and it's very generic and it's open and fair competition for everybody and you only receive one bid, that would be unfortunate, but it's definitely possible as long as you did not restrict competition in any way. Our templates are set up so that you won't restrict competition if you're using ours. But that if you restrict the competition in any way, then it would be a problem if you only received one bid.
Great, all right, and people are really enjoying your answers, so they keep putting questions in the chat. Our next one is, if we go the emergency procurement route, can we choose who we want as a vendor, and can we start the contract as early as July 1st and run through the entire school year?
Yes. Yep, you can do that and just carry it through and be done with it.
Great. Okay, last question I see for right now. Third method, can SFAs partner to add on to a contract with a vendor as a collective bargaining? You know what, I'm going to pause there. Deanna, can you come off mute and just explain your question a bit, because I'm getting lost within the verbiage there. All right, well, we'll give Deanna another minute or so. Deanna, if you do want to come back on, let us know. Why don't we continue on and we can circle back to that question if we get to it.
All right. So, oh, Deanna's off mute. It must not be working.
Oh, no. I think what the question is
maybe on piggyback, like can they pay? Is it on piggybacking maybe?
Well, we'll try to answer the question as we think it's being phrased, and obviously we can circle back offline if this is not it. But I think what's being asked is if there's an existing contract in place, can a current SFA be added onto that contract? Piggybacking on a current contract.
Yeah.
Do you want to answer? Do you want me to
Go for it?
Okay. So the answer is it depends. If the contract that is in place stated that there may be additions to the contract, then that's potentially an option. But the original solicitation would have had to allow for that in the first place. So there's some optional language in our templates, and if folks chose to implement that, it could be possible. It also depends on how big the change to the contract would be. If a large SFA is adding one site, probably not an issue. If the volume of the contract and the quantity of the contract is going to double in size, that would be considered a material change and wouldn't necessarily be allowable. So it depends. And if you're interested in having OSSE take a look at whether it's viable in your contract, we're happy to support you working through that. So I hope that helped. And that was the last question we have in the chat. I'll hand it back to Alex for more discussion.
Thanks. All right, so just some discussion questions. I think some people have already started sharing thoughts, but we'd love to hear your initial thoughts on next steps to secure meals for summer in this school year. So I think I saw Trina say she might just go emergency procurement starting July 1st and take it from there for the school year. But what are other initial thoughts that people have on next steps? Any other questions that we can help answer? And you guys can come off mute and put it into the chat if you have initial thoughts. Even if you're not quite sure and you're thinking like, I'm kind of thinking this, another school might hear what you're saying and it might spark ideas for them.
So Alex, this is Chris Bolton. I think that the emergency procurement, because just the short time that was given about this, I think that's what's, I guess, worrying us all and making us all kind of uneasy about this whole situation. I mean, there's no doubt in my mind all these schools are going to push through and get meals out, but I think a lot of them don't have time to do a lot of that other stuff and find a quality, sustainable contract.
I think that sounds like a good plan. I think I listed it first on my slides for a reason. So thank you for sharing. Gail, I see that you have your hand raised.
I just wanted to confirm, is it possible to do a combination? Like in the summer, if we were to partner with a group that's already supporting that Nicole can connect us to, but we would still have the option then to utilize emergency procurement for the school year if we feel like, again, the shortness of needing to go through that whole procurement process itself is time consuming. So we would, but if we selected to do the tag on with the other group, we are still eligible for emergency procurement if we wanted to utilize that for the next school year.
Yeah, that is actually a great point to bring up. If you choose to work with Nicole and a sponsor in the summer, you would still need to do different meals for the school year. The sponsors are just serving SFSP in the summer, which is not eligible for the school year. So yes, if you go work with Nicole, you go under a sponsor for summer, you still would need to figure out this school year. So thank you. That's great clarification.
iDream is a small school, much smaller than I think some of the other networks on here. And so for summer, we really only have, we don't have many meals. So I think I'll be reaching out to Nicole to see if that works for summer. And I mean, I love the partnering with another self-prep SFA idea. It's something that has been recommended to us. And so I'm hoping to go that route going forward for the school year.
Thanks, Matt. I feel like you had a head start on this conversation for other reasons with preferred meals. So thank you so much for sharing that. Yeah. Malika, did I see you come off mute at one point?
I did. I had a question. So we're currently being vended because of our kitchen renovation, and don't know what date we're going to be done. So I wanted to know extending my contract to an unknown date, and then once we're able to restart, to being just full service self-prep. Like, how would that work with contracts? And it just sounds like a whole lot of confusion to me.
I thought you were coming off mute to offer your self-prep services to everyone on this call, but
yeah, not this year.
No, okay. So, okay, and are you using preferred? So do you need to switch
No,
vendors?
I'm not using preferred. I have a
using
vendor right now, but I need to extend the contract because our date got pushed back.
Got it. Can she get 60 days or?
I think it depends on what's stated in your contract, so we might need to talk offline on that one. I'm not sure I can answer without more depth on the contract.
If you want to send us the contract that you, like the contract that you have signed and any extension, send it to us and we will circle back with you and we can hop on a call and talk about what your options are.
Okay.
Alex, I'm wondering, have you all put out a solicit or email blast to SFAs who do have the capacity or has the ability to do the meals in terms of their capacity to potentially take on additional?
You know, we've connected people with SFAs in previous scenarios that are like very close in proximity. That is a great idea. There's a Beyond the Tray going out by the end of May. And so thank you so much for naming that. And Lizette, if you don't mind, since I've designated you as our note taker today, can you write that down for me and we'll make sure that gets in Beyond the Tray. And then if SFAs have the capacity, we will then in turn send this information out to you all so you have that as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, Alex, I also had my hand raised because I just wanted to follow up with that. So we do have a couple of self-prep, Kimberly and Vernal. We also have, well, Friendship isn't interested in it at this time, but we have put some schools in. Yes, see, there you go. Thanks, Kimberly. So we have been putting some of the SFAs in touch with some of our self-prep community. So we're happy to continue to create those relationships as schools identify the opportunity to go out to bid and potentially work with other schools. And then the other thing that I wanted to ask was clarifying for Deanna. It looks like just following up on the comment that she made, if Deanna, if you were interested in potentially helping other schools by having them piggyback on your contract, is that what you're trying to get across? Because that's what it looks like from the previous statement that you made. And you can type that in the chat because I know that you aren't able to speak. So just again, looking to see if you were looking to offer the opportunity for other schools to piggyback off your contract. That would be great clarification. Thanks.
Thanks, Lizette. That thought crossed my mind also. Yeah, they may consider options. It depends, like if KIPP has the style of service that's needed, because they also have preferred, but have within a different capacity to potentially do the scratch cooking. So, but yeah, check your contract, and if you do a different vendor and you have the option, KIPP is a really good example because they're a huge SFA, so they have a designated food service director. And potentially the ability to take on site. So thank you for sharing that. We already went out to bid and made an award and signed a new contract. What are the next steps within OSSE? So if your contract is signed with someone that's not Preferred Meals, you're good to go. You just need to upload that information in your NSLP application. If it was an FSMC solicitation, we would need to see it. But if it's not and you don't have preferred, you're good to go. I'm seeing another question from Bernadette. If we send out the RFP to additional vendors, once we see the list, how much time should we give new vendors to respond? Oh, so you have a solicitation out now. I mean, the solicitation is public, so hopefully interested vendors, if you have one out now, hopefully they see it. I don't have a recommendation for additional time, like extending the open.
I mean, I think if you're looking to secure meals by July 1st, you're going to have to make a decision prior to that for a vendor to be set up in time, and that's not much time. So, I don't have an exact date in mind either, but doing proactive outreach to everyone on the vendor list would be my recommendation.
All right, and while questions are potentially still coming in, I'm just going to pose this next question. We are almost out of time, but if you're interested in procuring collaboratively with other SFAs, I just wanted to leave space for that. I'm happy to shoot everyone an email if someone wants to host another call and just get SFA interest. You're welcome to do that. OSSE is welcome to join the call if you just needed someone there to answer questions or listen in. But I did want to leave space. So if you're interested in procuring collaboratively with other SFAs, potentially going out to bid together, or hitting up one of our other SFA friends to see if you can buy meals from them, please feel free to just put anything in the chat. All right, I think Chris, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I just want to let everybody know too that the, I don't know if you know, but the Capital Area Food Bank, they're still using their CARES Act money. So I think they have a program too.
Awesome, thanks. I do think that's one of the sponsors Nicole's working with for summer, who said they have the capacity, so that's awesome. Gail, I see your hand up, but I think this is from earlier. I just wanted to make sure if you had another question, I didn't skip you. Okay, awesome. All right, everyone. The last thing that we have on here are just listed resources. And so we'll send out this deck to everybody, but it's just relist resources that are embedded within the training. And then something that has been mentioned yet is everyone can register for office hours. I think the next office hours are coming up June 10th. So that's like 2 weeks away. So don't feel like you have to wait for office hours. You can reach out to us, reach out to your program specialist. I understand that this is definitely more time sensitive and you don't need to wait until the next office hours if you want to talk through things. But we do have office hours monthly, so you're always welcome to sign up for those, and you have our undivided attention to talk about anything during that. And then reach out to your program specialist. You can, of course, reach out to myself or Liz too, especially related to procurement. And so while in summary, I know OSSE has done a lot to really empower SFAs to do their own procurement and make their own solicitations and feel empowered to make these decisions. This is very stressful, we understand, and so we're here to help you. So if you want us to look at a contract you've already signed and see what's allowable, or run things by us, or just ping us with questions, we are here to help. So please, please don't hesitate to reach out. And we'll get you the slide deck ASAP. All right, thank you, everybody.